Commander Prax adjusted his ceremonial medals, their weight a reminder of victories long past and defeats he wished he could forget. His scarred tentacles twitched with irritation as he watched the young generals of the High Council swagger into the chamber, their pristine uniforms unmarked by battle. "The humans are preparing another offensive," Prax announced, his voice carrying the gravelly tone of someone who had inhaled too much plasma smoke during their service years. "Our border colonies are reporting increased activity." General Nix R.A., barely old enough to remember the last war, let out a dismissive click from his primary breathing valve. "Commander Prax, with all due respect to your historic service, the humans are nothing more than an inconvenience. Our new quantum barrier technology makes their weapons obsolete." Prax felt his chromatophores flush dark purple with frustration. These younglings, born into the peace he and his comrades had sacrificed so much to achieve, understood nothing. He glanced around the gleaming council chamber, its walls lined with holographic displays showing the mighty galactic hegemony's fleet movements. Every ship was a masterpiece of engineering, every weapon a testament to their technological superiority. "You sound exactly like Supreme Admiral Kor did 30 cycles ago," Prax said, letting sarcasm drip from every word. "Right before the humans turned his flagship into an artificial asteroid belt." The chamber erupted in murmurs. General Nix Array's secondary eyes narrowed. "That was before we developed the Mark VII neural network defense grid, before our predictive algorithms reached 99.99% accuracy. Before you became too smart to recognize stupidity," Prax interrupted, earning several gasps from the younger council members. "Let me tell you about real predictions. I predicted that humans would never surrender after our first victory. I predicted they would study our every weakness. And now, I predict that your precious neural network will be nothing but scrap metal when they show us whatever they've been cooking up in those primitive laboratories of theirs." High Chancellor Zena, her crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the chamber's ambient light, raised all four of her hands for silence. "Commander Prax, while we respect your experience, the Council has reviewed the tactical analyses. The humans' technological development has plateaued. Their ships still rely on fusion drives, their weapons still use physical projectiles. And that's exactly why they're dangerous." Prax slammed his tentacle against the holographic display, causing the fleet formations to scatter like startled prey fish. "You all sit here, surrounded by our greatest achievements, believing that technology alone wins wars. But humans," he let out a bitter laugh, "humans look at a fusion drive and don't see an outdated propulsion system. They see a bomb waiting to happen." "That's barbaric," someone muttered from the back of the chamber. "Yes," Prax exclaimed. "Yes, it is. And that's what none of you understand. Humans don't play by our rules. They don't care about elegant solutions or perfect algorithms. They'll strap a fusion drive to an asteroid, paint it to look like space debris, and wait months for the perfect moment to ruin your whole day." General Nix Ra's scales rippled with barely contained contempt. "Commander, perhaps it's time to acknowledge that your generation's paranoia about humans is outdated. We've monitored their communications, analyzed their military exercises. Our simulations show—" "Your simulations," Prax laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "Tell me, General, have your simulations accounted for human sarcasm? For their ability to laugh in the face of certain death? For their infuriating habit of treating combat like some sort of entertainment?" The council chamber fell silent. Prax looked at each face, seeing the same confidence, the same certainty he'd seen in his own reflection before the last war, before he learned what humans were truly capable of. "I once watched a human pilot fly through her own ship's explosion to land a killing blow," Prax said quietly. "When we recovered her communication logs, she was telling jokes to her squadron the entire time. Her last words were, 'Hey, watch this, do your simulations account for that level of beautiful insanity?'" High Chancellor Zena's antennae twitched thoughtfully. "What would you have us do, Commander?" "Abandon our technological advantage. Revert to more primitive methods." "I would have you remember," Prax said, his voice heavy with the weight of hard-won wisdom, "that while we were building better computers, the humans were building better humans. While we perfected our predictions, they practiced being unpredictable. And while you sit here, convinced of your superiority, they're out there, probably inventing new ways to turn our greatest strengths into weaknesses." The chamber's automated systems chimed, indicating the end of the session. As the council members began to file out, Prax noticed several of the younger generals exchange worried glances. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "Oh, and General Nixra," Prax called out. The young general turned, his scales still showing patterns of annoyance. "When you see a human ship broadcasting nothing but what they call laugh tracks on all frequencies, run. Run as fast and as far as you can." "Why?" Nixra asked, unable to hide his curiosity. Because Prax said with a grim smile, "It means they've just figured out how to weaponize their sense of humor. And trust me, you don't want to be around for the punchline." Commander Prax's memories drifted back to that fateful day, 30 cycles ago. He had been a junior diplomatic officer then, assigned to the first contact vessel Eternal Wisdom. The name alone should have been their first warning about pride coming before a fall. The human ship looked primitive compared to their sleek vessel. Its hull was patched in places, covered in what appeared to be manually painted identification marks. The ship's name, Thunderchild, was written in what their linguists would later identify as multiple Earth languages. "They're responding to our hail," communications officer Leary announced, her bioluminescent patches glowing with excitement. "But it's strange." "Define strange," Captain Moxta demanded, his ceremonial head frills extended to their full impressive length. "They're laughing, sir, and playing what appears to be celebratory music." The human's transmission crackled through their advanced communications array. "Hot damn, would you look at that. Real aliens. Hey there, space friends. I'm Captain Alexis Blackwood of the Thunderchild, and holy shit, you look amazing. Are those natural bioluminescent patches? That's so cool." Captain Moxta's frills drooped slightly in confusion. This wasn't following any of the first contact protocols they'd prepared. "I am Captain Moxta of the galactic hegemony vessel Eternal Wisdom. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations with your species." "Awesome. Listen, we've got coffee and donuts ready in our mess hall. Want to come over?" "Fair warning though, our artificial gravity's been a bit wonky since that dust-up with the pirates last week, so you might want to bring magnetic boots." The bridge crew exchanged bewildered looks. Pirates? Wonky gravity? Donuts? None of this matched their extensive research on potential first contact scenarios. "Perhaps," Captain Moxta said stiffly, "it would be more appropriate for you to visit our vessel. We have proper diplomatic facilities and—" "Oh man, you should see your faces," Captain Blackwood laughed. "Well, assuming those are your faces. The translucent parts, right? Look, I get it. Big fancy ship, probably got all sorts of protocols and procedures. But trust me, you haven't lived until you've had coffee and donuts in variable gravity. It's like a sport and a meal all in one." Young Prax watched in fascination as Captain Moxta's scales cycled through various shades of confusion and indignation. The human's casual attitude was unprecedented in their diplomatic history. Captain Blackwood Moxta said, attempting to regain control of the conversation, "Our scans indicate your vessel's technology is somewhat limited. Perhaps we could assist in upgrading your systems to meet proper interstellar standards." The laughter on the other end of the communication died abruptly. "Limited? Buddy, Thunderchild might not look pretty, but she's got it where it counts. We jerry-rigged a tachyon drive using spare parts and a microwave. Sure, it makes all our coffee taste like metal, but we're here, aren't we? You modified a cooking device to assist with faster-than-light travel." The ship's science officer, Ven Pio, looked like she might faint. "Well, yeah, you work with what you've got, right? Speaking of which, that's a nice quantum barrier you've got around your ship. Bet it cost a fortune. We just painted our hull with this neat carbon-based compound we found on an asteroid. Does pretty much the same thing, plus it glows in the dark." The bridge fell silent. Their quantum barrier technology was supposed to be undetectable. It was their greatest defensive achievement, and this human had not only spotted it but compared it to paint. "That's impossible," Ven Po whispered. "Their sensors shouldn't be able to detect." "Oh, we can't detect it with sensors," Blackwood interrupted cheerfully. "We just noticed how the local space dust flows around your ship differently. My engineer, Sophie, she used to study fluid dynamics before she decided space was more fun. Hey Sophie, say hi to our new friends." A new voice joined the transmission, accompanied by what sounded like metal music. "Hi, Your quantum field harmonics are super pretty. Question though, have you guys considered the resonance issues with your port side matrix? Because if you hit the right frequency, you could probably... That's classified information, Captain Mox Ta bellowed. Oh sorry, Sophie replied, not sounding sorry at all, just trying to help. Would hate to see such a pretty ship shake itself apart because of a math error. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Well, technically lost the t-shirt in the resulting explosion, but you get the idea. Young Prax watched as Captain Mox Ta's composure crumbled. The mighty eternal wisdom, pride of the hegemony's diplomatic fleet, was being lectured about safety by a species that thought strapping a cooking device to an engine was a reasonable solution to interstellar travel. Captain Blackwood Mox Ta said through clenched breathing valves, I believe we should postpone this diplomatic exchange until your species has achieved a more appropriate level of technological sophistication. Oh, come on. We were just about to show you our collection of space shanties. We wrote them ourselves, although I should warn you that verse 3 of the Ballad of the Broken Warp Core gets a bit rowdy. End transmission, Mox Ta ordered. As the human's disappointed face disappeared from the screen, he turned to his crew. Make a note in the official record. The humans are clearly too primitive and unstable for meaningful diplomatic relations. Set course back to hegemony space. As the eternal wisdom prepared to depart, young Prax noticed something odd on his sensor display. Sir? The Thunder Child is following us. What? Impossible. Their engines couldn't possibly. They appear to be surfing our quantum wake, sir. Very efficiently, I might add. Captain Blackwood's voice crackled through their speakers one last time. Hey, thanks for the lift. We'd been trying to figure out how to maximize our fuel efficiency, and your quantum wake is perfect for testing our new surfing algorithms. Sophie says to tell you thanks for the data. The present-day Prax shook his head at the memory. They had been so proud, so certain of their superiority. They hadn't understood that humans didn't see technology as a measure of civilization. They saw it as a toy to be played with, broken and rebuilt in ways that defied logic. We didn't start a war that day, he muttered to himself. We just didn't realize it was already inevitable. The first battles were almost too easy. Prax, now promoted to strike commander, watched through his command viewport as another human colony fell to the hegemony's superior firepower. The orbital defense stations, built from retrofitted cargo containers and mining platforms, crumbled under precision quantum strikes. Target neutralized, his weapons officer reported with practiced efficiency. No survivors detected in the defense fleet. But something bothered Prax about these victories. They were too clean, too simple. The humans they'd met during first contact had been resourceful, unpredictable. These colonists barely put up a fight. Strike commander, his sensor operator, called out, "We're detecting unusual energy readings from the surface." Before Prax could respond, a massive explosion lit up the planet's atmosphere. Their quantum sensors screamed as space itself seemed to twist. Report, he demanded. They detonated their fusion reactors, sir. All of them. Simultaneously. The resulting spatial distortion is making it impossible to establish a stable quantum field. Prax felt his scales tighten. The humans had sacrificed their own colony to deny the hegemony a functional base of operations. The sheer audacity of it sent shivers through his primary nervous system. The pattern repeated across 3 more colonies. Each time, the hegemony would achieve a swift victory, only to have the humans turn their own technology into weapons of denial. Some colonies launched their entire infrastructure into their suns. Others transformed their atmospheric processors into chemical weapons factories. One particularly creative group programmed their mining drones to sing human battle hymns while carrying fusion bombs into hegemony supply lines. Then came Admiral Maya Sterling. This is a message for the alien fleet currently occupying the Proxima sector. The transmission began. The human admiral appeared on their screens, her dark skin contrasting sharply with a white uniform that seemed purposefully designed to draw attention. I must congratulate you on your recent victories. Very impressive. Very clean. Very predictable. Supreme Commander San Tao, watching from his flagship, bristled at her tone. You dare mock the might of the hegemony? Oh, I'm not mocking, Sterling replied with a smile that reminded Prax of a predator. I'm teaching. Lesson 1: Humans love a good underdog story. The transmission ended. Moments later, their sensors detected thousands of small objects appearing from behind Proxima's star. Debris, the sensor operator reported dismissively. Likely from their destroyed colonies. Prax noticed something odd about the debris patterns. No, they're moving too uniformly. Scan for energy signatures. But it was too late. The debris field, composed of fragments from their own destroyed ships, had been fitted with crude but effective propulsion systems. Each piece carried a miniature fusion bomb. They lost 30 ships in the first wave. Another 50 were crippled by the spatial distortions caused by the coordinated explosions. Supreme Commander San Tao ordered a retreat, only to find that the humans had seeded the quantum corridors with gravimetric mines disguised as communication buoys. Lesson 2. Sterling's voice crackled through their damaged communications array. We don't believe in waste. Everything can be a weapon if you're creative enough. The hegemony adapted, implementing new scanning protocols and defensive formations. They developed automated systems to detect and neutralize human improvised weapons. Each victory added to their confidence, each conquered colony another testament to their superiority. But veteran officers like Prax noticed troubling patterns. The humans never defended the same way twice. They never used the same tricks. Each encounter brought new surprises, new innovations born of desperate creativity. During a high-level strategy meeting, Prax voiced his concerns. We're not fighting their real forces, he argued, pointing to the battle data. These colonies, these fleets, they're sacrificial pieces. The humans are learning from each engagement, adapting their tactics while feeding us false confidence. Admiral Lex Voas, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the holographic displays, dismissed his warnings. Your caution borders on paranoia, Strike Commander. Our forces control 12 major systems. Their industrial capacity is crippled. Their supply lines are in ruins. Victory is all but assured. Then explain this. Prax projected a series of surveillance images. Their civilian ships are still operating throughout neutral space. Their merchants still trade. Their diplomatic vessels still visit non-aligned worlds. If we've crippled them so severely, how are they maintaining such a visible presence? Brave words from a dying species, another commander offered. Let them play at normalcy while we crush their military. Then came Sterling's third lesson. A single human transport, registered as a civilian merchant vessel, dropped out of quantum space near one of their primary fleet anchorages. When customs ships approached, it broadcast a simple message. Lesson 3. Sometimes the best weapons are the ones your enemy gives you. The transport detonated, releasing a cloud of specialized nanites. These weren't weapons, they were maintenance robots, stolen or salvaged from destroyed hegemony ships. But the humans had reprogrammed them. Instead of repairing quantum barriers, they created microscopic flaws. Rather than reinforcing hull plating, they weakened structural supports. 20 capital ships were lost before they could contain the nanite swarm. The humans had turned the hegemony's own maintenance systems into a devastating weapon. Prax attended the funeral ceremonies for the lost crews. Standing before the memorial crystals, he overheard 2 junior officers discussing intercepted human communications. They call it Operation Trojan Horse, one said. Apparently it's based on an ancient human military strategy. Something about a giant wooden construct used to hide warriors. Primitive, his companion scoffed. Using stories from their pre-space era to plan modern military operations. But Praxex understood. The humans weren't relying on their past, they were learning from it. Each defeat, each lost colony, each sacrificed position was teaching them how to fight a technologically superior enemy. They were turning the hegemony's greatest strengths into vulnerabilities. During the next staff meeting, he made one final attempt to warn his superiors. The humans aren't fighting to win battles, he explained. They're fighting to learn. Each engagement, no matter the outcome, makes them more dangerous. Admiral Lex Vos looked down at him from her command podium. And what would you suggest, Strike Commander? That we retreat? That we show weakness before these primitives? I suggest we recognize that our enemy's greatest weapon isn't their technology or their tactics, Prax replied. It's their ability to adapt, to transform defeat into knowledge, to find humor in hopeless situations and victory in apparent surrender. His words fell on deaf ears. The hegemony continued its advance, counting its victories, celebrating its superiority. None of them realized that each triumphant battle report was being studied, analyzed, and understood by human strategists who saw defeat not as an end, but as a beginning. Maya Sterling's final lesson was still to come, and it would teach the hegemony the true cost of underestimating humanity's capacity for turning the impossible into the inevitable. The day everything changed started with laughter. Prax stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Quantum Dawn, as the human transmission played across every frequency. Just laughter, endless loops of it, broadcast from somewhere deep in their controlled space. Some officers removed their audio receivers. Others demanded the communications be blocked, but Prax remembered his own words from years ago when humans laugh, run. But the hegemony fleet didn't run. They advanced. Multiple quantum signatures detected, his sensor officer reported. Human fleet composition. Unknown configurations. The first wave of human ships emerged from quantum space, and Prax felt his heart stop. Gone were the cobbled-together defenses and improvised weapons. These vessels were sleek, purpose-built warships. Their hulls bore the scars of previous battles, painted over with phrases like "thanks for the lessons" and "class of hegemony war." Admiral Sterling's face appeared on their main display. She'd aged since their last encounter, but her predatory smile remained unchanged. Final lesson, friends. Everything before this was just practice. The human ships moved with impossible precision. Prax watched in horror as they executed maneuvers that should have torn their vessels apart. Their quantum wakes intersected in ways that created cascading disruption patterns, turning space itself into a weapon. "They've been studying our quantum drive signatures," Prax realized aloud. Every battle, every engagement, they were learning how our ships move through space. The hegemony fleet's formation, perfected over centuries of warfare, suddenly became a liability. The humans had learned to predict their standardized responses, their tactical algorithms, their battle protocols. They didn't need to match hegemony technology, they just needed to know how it would be used. "Remember those colonies we sacrificed?" Sterling's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "The ones you thought were poorly defended? They were laboratories. Every defeat taught us something new. Every lost battle showed us another way to win the war." Prax watched as human ships performed what looked like combat dances, their movements choreographed to create interference patterns that disrupted quantum barriers. They'd turned warfare into an art form, blending science and savagery in ways that defied conventional military doctrine. "Launch the automated defense platforms," his executive officer suggested. "Their behavioral patterns are too random for targeting computers." "No," Prax countermanded, "that's exactly what they want. Look at their formation." The human fleet had arranged itself in a pattern that seemed chaotic at first glance, but Prax had spent years studying human culture. He recognized the shape. It was a musical score, their ships positioned like notes on a scale. The gaps in their formation weren't weaknesses, they were calculated spaces designed to trap automated platforms in overlapping fields of fire. But the true horror came when the humans revealed their new weapons. Missiles that didn't explode. Instead, they attached themselves to hegemony ships and broadcast frequencies that interfered with crew members' neural patterns. The affected crews reported hearing human laughter in their minds, an endless loop of psychological warfare that drove even the most disciplined officers to madness. "Quantum wake destabilization in sectors 7 through 12, someone reported. They're using our own drive signatures to create gravitational shear zones." Prax watched as human ships deliberately flew through these zones, their hulls flexing and distorting in ways that should have been structurally impossible. They'd somehow developed adaptive materials that turned the stress of spatial distortion into kinetic energy. "Pull back to secondary positions," he ordered. "Maintain distance from." "Belay that order." Supreme Commander San Tal's voice cut through the chaos. "The hegemony does not retreat before primitives. Launch all reserves. Activate the quantum cascade protocols." Prax felt his scales ripple with dread. "Supreme Commander, the quantum cascade is untested in combat conditions. The spatial distortions could." "Your caution has become tiresome," Strike Commander San Tal interrupted. "Execute the cascade." The quantum cascade was the hegemony's ultimate weapon, a synchronized pulse from multiple quantum drives that could theoretically tear a hole in space-time itself. As the energy built up, Prax noticed something odd about the human fleet's new formation. "They're creating a resonance pattern," he whispered. "The same way they learned to disrupt our barriers. Supreme Commander, abort the cascade. They're going to." The human ships fired their weapons simultaneously, not at the hegemony fleet, but into carefully calculated points in space. The combined effect created a harmonic frequency that synchronized with the quantum cascade's energy wave. Instead of tearing space apart, the cascade energy was reflected, amplified, and redirected. The results were catastrophic. 30% of the hegemony fleet vanished instantly, translated into quantum space in pieces. Another 40% suffered critical drive failures as their quantum fields collapsed. Prax's own ship survived only because he'd ordered an emergency shutdown of all quantum systems seconds before impact. An elegant solution. Admiral Sterling's voice was almost gentle. "You taught us how energy flows through space, how quantum fields interact, how your technology thinks and behaves. We just needed time to learn the music of it all." Through damaged sensors, Prax watched human ships begin rescue operations not just for their own crews, but for stranded hegemony vessels as well. They broadcast medical protocols, emergency procedures, and coordinates for safe zones where damaged ships could receive assistance. "You see," Sterling continued, "that's the real difference between us. You built your strength on the assumption that superior technology means superior civilization. We built ours on the understanding that true strength lies in how you treat those you could destroy." The medical ships that approached bore no weapons. Their hulls were painted with universal symbols for aid and mercy. Even now, with victory in their grasp, the humans chose to demonstrate both their power and their restraint. Supreme Commander Sontal's final transmission was thick with rage. "You dare offer US pity? You think mercy will erase this humiliation?" "Not pity," Sterling corrected. "Professional courtesy. Those are medical ships crewed by veterans of our earlier defeats. They remember what it's like to lose everything. They insisted on being here to help, even after what your forces did to their colonies." Prax ordered his remaining crew to accept the human assistance. As the medical ships approached, he noticed their names Second Chance, Better Angels, Grace under fire even in victory. The humans wrapped their actions in layers of meaning and message. The defeat changed everything, not just strategically or militarily, but culturally. The hegemony had based its entire civilization on the premise of technological supremacy. Now they faced an enemy who had turned that premise into a weakness, who had learned to dance between the quantum strings of space itself, and who responded to years of devastating warfare with offers of medical assistance. As Prax watched human doctors treat his wounded crew with the same care they showed their own, he finally understood. The humans hadn't just been fighting a war, they'd been conducting the galaxy's most expensive research project. Every battle had been a data point, every defeat a lesson, every loss an investment in future victory. And through it all, they had never lost their ability to laugh. Even now, in the midst of rescue operations, he could hear human crews joking with each other, finding humor in the darkest moments, turning the aftermath of battle into something almost like a celebration of life. "Your people are impossible to understand," he told a human medical officer who was treating his radiation burns. The human grinned. "That's our secret weapon, Commander. Even we don't understand us. Makes it real hard for anyone else to figure us out." Looking at the debris field that had once been the pride of the hegemony fleet, Prax couldn't help but appreciate the irony. They had spent years dismissing humans as primitive, only to discover that their true power lay not in technology, but in their ability to turn understanding itself into a weapon. The retreat wasn't orderly. It wasn't dignified. It was survival, pure and simple. Prax coordinated what remained of his battle group, watching as another quantum corridor collapsed behind them. The humans had learned to predict their escape routes, seeding them with devices that turned the very fabric of space against hegemony drives. "Status report," he demanded, though he dreaded the answer. 17 ships lost in the last jump, his executive officer reported. "The humans aren't just following us anymore. They're appearing ahead of our projected routes." Through the command viewport, Prax watched the Thunder's Echo, named after that first contact ship, emerge from quantum space directly in their path. Its hull bore the same casual modifications and seemingly random patches as its predecessor, but now each imperfection concealed a weapon they couldn't counter. "This is Captain Sandra Blackwood." The transmission came through clear and confident. "Daughter of Alexis Blackwood. Remember her? The one your people dismissed as primitive 30 years ago. She wanted to share coffee and donuts. You chose war instead." The name hit Prax like a physical blow. Of course they would face Blackwood's daughter here, now at the end of everything. The humans understood symbolism too well to waste such an opportunity. "Your quantum corridors are compromised," Sandra continued. "We've had years to study how your ships navigate. Every retreat follows the same patterns, uses the same protocols. You taught us the rules of quantum space travel, and now we're changing them." The hegemony's greatest advantage had become their greatest vulnerability. Their standardized protocols, refined over centuries, were now predictable weaknesses to be exploited. Ninth Fleet reports total loss of quantum drive capability, his communications officer announced. Third and Fifth Fleets are gone. Just gone. The humans have found a way to redirect quantum jumps into deep space. Prax felt the weight of every decision, every dismissive report about human capabilities, every missed opportunity for peace. They had created this nightmare through their own arrogance. The humans advanced methodically into hegemony space, but not as conquerors. Each system they took became a lesson in humiliation. They didn't destroy infrastructure, they improved it. They didn't subjugate populations, they offered partnerships. Worlds that had lived under hegemony control for generations suddenly saw alternatives. Defense grid in the Proxima cluster has gone silent, someone reported. They're not destroying it, they're reprogramming it, using our own security networks to track our movements. The final blow to Prax's pride came during the battle for New Alexandria, the hegemony's premier research world. The human fleet appeared not with weapons charged, but with a transmission from their science division. "We've reviewed your quantum field equations," the human scientist said, pushing up her glasses. "Found some really interesting optimization opportunities. Your current configuration wastes about 40% of its potential energy. We made some adjustments to the ones we captured. Want to see?" They proceeded to demonstrate how they'd improved upon centuries of hegemony quantum technology in mere years. The modifications weren't just effective, they were elegant. They showed an understanding of quantum mechanics that went beyond mere technical knowledge into something almost artistic. Prax attempted to negotiate peace twice during the retreat. Both times, the humans responded with terms that were simultaneously generous and humiliating. "We don't want your territory," Admiral Sterling explained during the second attempt. "We don't even want revenge for our lost colonies. We want you to understand why you lost." "We lost because you deceived us," Prax argued. "Hid your true capabilities." Sterling laughed, the sound haunting in its familiarity. "No, Commander. You lost because you couldn't imagine that anyone could look at the universe differently than you do. Every human child knows the story of David and Goliath, or of the underdog who wins through cunning rather than strength. You taught us about quantum physics. We taught ourselves how to use that knowledge in ways you never considered." The retreat continued. System after system fell, not to destruction but to transformation. The humans treated each victory as an opportunity to demonstrate not just their military superiority, but their capacity for innovation. Prax lost his closest friend during the battle for the Centauri Gateway. Commander Leary, now captain of her own ship, attempted to hold the line while civilian vessels evacuated. They're offering surrender terms. Her final transmission crackled through static. "But I can't, not after everything, not after." Her ship vanished in a quantum implosion. The humans named the resulting spatial phenomenon Leary's sacrifice and established safety protocols to prevent other ships from suffering the same fate. "Your friend died bravely," Sandra Blackwood told him later, during yet another rescue operation. "We've established a scholarship in her name, for young officers who show exceptional courage in protecting civilian lives." The gesture struck Prax speechless. The humans didn't just defeat their enemies, they learned from them, honored them, and then improved upon everything they had built. The retreat reached its inevitable conclusion at the gates of dawn, the hegemony's most heavily fortified system. Their remaining ships gathered for one final stand, surrounded by defenses that had taken centuries to build. Admiral Sterling's offer of terms came not as an ultimatum, but as an invitation. "Your quantum technology is brilliant," she began, "truly revolutionary. But you stopped innovating, stopped questioning. stopped looking for new possibilities. We would love to work with you, learn from you, and share what we've learned. But first, you need to understand that technology alone isn't enough. You need to understand why a species that still laughs at jokes about malfunctioning artificial gravity can defeat an empire built on quantum superiority. Prax watched the human fleet take up positions around the gates of dawn. Their ships moved with impossible grace, using principles of quantum mechanics that the hegemony had never conceived. They had taken everything the hegemony knew about space travel and turned it into an art form. "You're not going to destroy our defenses, are you?" he asked Sterling. "Why would we? They're beautifully designed. We're going to study them, improve them, and then teach you how we did it. That's a far better revenge than destruction, don't you think?" The war ended not with a battle, but with a demonstration. The humans showed the hegemony exactly how they had learned to manipulate quantum fields, how they had turned defeat into knowledge, and how they had transformed that knowledge into victory. And through it all, they never stopped laughing. Never stopped finding joy in discovery, even in the midst of war. That, more than any weapon or tactical innovation, was what the hegemony couldn't comprehend. The war that began with a declined invitation for coffee and donuts ended with humanity offering to teach their former enemies how to see the universe through new eyes. It was, Prax realized, both the most generous and most devastating victory possible. The council chamber fell silent as the emergency alerts flashed across every display. Prax watched the young generals' faces cycle through colors of fear and disbelief as they realized his warnings had come true. Multiple human vessels detected the automated system announced, approaching through impossible quantum vectors. General Nix Ara, his earlier arrogance replaced by poorly concealed panic, turned to Prax. "This is impossible. Our new defense grid was designed to prevent any unauthorized quantum transitions within 10 light-years of hegemony space." "Yes," Prax replied, allowing a touch of sarcasm to color his voice. "Just like our previous defense grid was supposed to be impenetrable, and the one before that, and the one before that, and the one before that." The main display activated, showing a familiar face that had aged with dignity. Admiral Maya Sterling, now bearing the rank of Grand Admiral, smiled at the assembled council. "Good morning, distinguished members of the Hegemony Council," she began pleasantly. "I believe one of our old friends tried to warn you about this." High Chancellor Zena's crystalline exoskeleton clicked nervously. "Admiral Sterling, this is a violation of the peace treaty. Your ships are not authorized to." "Oh, but they are," Sterling interrupted. "Check subsection 47B of the treaty. The one your predecessors didn't read carefully enough. We're allowed to demonstrate new technological developments that might affect the balance of power. Consider this a practical demonstration." Prax couldn't help but laugh, earning shocked looks from his fellow council members. "You hid the warning in the treaty itself. In the section about technological transparency." Commander Prax Sterling's smile widened. "Wonderful to see you again, and yes, we did. Been waiting 30 years for someone to actually read that clause carefully. Your bureaucrats were so busy looking for military restrictions, they missed the real message." The human ships had appeared through quantum corridors that shouldn't exist, using principles of space-time manipulation that defied hegemony understanding of physics. But they weren't attacking. They were performing what looked like an elaborate dance through the quantum wake patterns. "What you're seeing," Sterling explained, "is the result of 30 years of peaceful research. We took everything we learned during the war and asked, what if we stopped thinking about quantum mechanics as a tool for war? The results were interesting." The display showed human ships phasing through quantum space in ways that made several council members' secondary hearts stop. They weren't just traveling through space, they were weaving it, creating patterns that turned the quantum field itself into something almost alive. "Your quantum barrier technology taught us about the boundaries between normal and quantum space," Sterling continued. "We spent 30 years learning how to blur those boundaries, how to make the impossible not just possible, but beautiful." A young general, his scales pale with fear, whispered to Prax, "Why are they showing us this? Why reveal such capabilities?" Because, Prax replied, "They want us to understand what peace has cost us. While we've spent 30 years preparing for the last war, they've spent it imagining new possibilities." Sterling nodded approvingly. "Exactly, Commander. You always did understand us better than most. We're not here to threaten you. We're here to invite you to join us. To stop seeing the universe as a battlefield and start seeing it as, well, a playground. The human ships began generating quantum field patterns that transformed the space around them into swirling works of art. Energy formations that should have torn reality apart instead created displays of light and motion that defied description. 30 years ago, Sterling continued, we offered your people coffee and donuts. You chose war. Today we're offering you a chance to learn how to dance between the stars. To see quantum physics as more than just a way to power weapons or drive ships. The council chamber erupted in confused discussion. Some demanded immediate military response. Others called for diplomatic solutions. But Prax noticed something that made his heart skip. The youngest council members were watching the human ships with wonder rather than fear. Grand Admiral High Chancellor Zena spoke carefully. Are we to understand this demonstration is not a prelude to conflict? Conflict, Sterling laughed. Chancellor, if we wanted conflict, we wouldn't have spent 30 years figuring out how to turn quantum mechanics into an art form. No, this is an invitation. The same invitation we offered 30 years ago, just with better special effects. Sandra Blackwood's face appeared next to Sterling's. My mother used to say that the greatest tragedy of the war wasn't the lives lost or the worlds damaged. It was the time wasted fighting when we could have been learning from each other. Prax stepped forward. The humans never needed to defeat us militarily. They just needed us to understand that victory isn't always about dominance. Sometimes it's about learning to see the universe through new eyes. The human ships completed their quantum dance, leaving behind patterns in space-time that would take hegemony scientists years to understand. But understanding, Prax realized, wasn't the point. The point was learning to appreciate the beauty in the unknown. We've established a joint research facility in neutral space, Sterling announced, staffed by human and hegemony scientists working together. No weapons research, no military applications, just pure exploration of what's possible when we stop trying to prove who's superior and start learning from each other. The council members watched as the human fleet departed, not through conventional quantum corridors, but through paths in space-time that challenged everything they thought they knew about physics. They left behind not just questions and confusion, but a sense of possibility that the hegemony hadn't felt in generations. They beat us twice, Prax told the silent chamber. Once with weapons and once with wonder. The real question is, which defeat will we learn from? Years of watching humans had taught him to appreciate irony. The species they had dismissed as primitive had not only mastered hegemony technology but had transformed it into something beyond mere utility. They had taken the physics of war and turned it into art. As the council debated their response to the human demonstration, Prax received a private message from Sterling. Coffee and donuts are still on offer, Commander, and this time we figured out how to keep them fresh in variable quantum states. Turns out your quantum field equations were perfect for solving the problem of cold coffee. Funny how these things work out, isn't it? Prax looked out at the lingering quantum patterns left by the human ships, their beauty a testament to what was possible when knowledge was pursued for its own sake rather than for power. They had lost a war but gained an entirely new way of seeing the universe. And somewhere out there, he knew, humans were laughing not in victory or mockery, but in pure joy at the endless possibilities that lay in the spaces between the stars.